Live Fit Podcast, episode 126. Why can't I stick to my diet? With food addiction counselor Erin Wathen.
The reason I had an extra 10 pounds, I believe now, is because it kept me from going back out in the world. It kept me from doing what I'm doing now. It kept me from really putting myself out there because, I was a mom and I was teaching and I was running the school book fair, and that was safe, right? And the safety of being in the little mom bubble, was very secure. Like I could have spent the next 30 years just, rearranging the pillows on my couch. A lot of people do that. I kept noticing that even though I was working out a ton, in addition to getting paid to work out, I couldn't lose like the last 10 pounds. It was this ongoing struggle. And that's when I really got into nutrition and realized that I'd been eating mountains of sugar and gallons of Diet Coke since I was about 12. A lot of people are addicted to sugar, and it's not a shameful thing. It's just a fact, which got me into being a food addiction counselor.
Welcome to the Live Fit Podcast with Glenn Johnson, your resource for all things that contribute to good health. You will hear expert advice and interviews with leading authorities on fitness, food, fat loss, mindset, and the mind-body connection. You will find show notes, articles, and health programs at livefitpodcast.com.
Yes, it is time once again for the Live Fit Podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Johnson, your guide to better health. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It means a lot to me. Today's guest is Erin Wathen. She is a food addiction counselor and author of the book, Why Can't I Stick to My Diet? How to End the Food Drama. She's been a group exercise instructor for many years, and despite her experience helping others lose weight, Erin was not at peace with her body. She found good nutrition to be the missing piece of the puzzle. She was always on a diet and never quite could reach her goal weight. Through a lot of trial and error, though, Erin found her last diet, which became her food plan and the basis of her book. Erin's philosophy is, food isn't a number on a scale or how often we exercise, but our lives as a whole. Let's hear what Erin Wathen has to say and how she can help you live your life healthy, fit, and free.
I grew up in California and then I actually went to college in Oregon and grad school in Hawaii in human resource management.
Exciting.
And yeah, the Hawaii part was good. And then we moved to Manhattan once I got married. Spent a long time in HR, and then when I had my first child, we moved to the Connecticut suburbs, in which after about 6 months, I realized I couldn't just talk about rice cereal all day with the mommies. Nothing against the mommies. I just knew there was more out there. So that's what got me into teaching fitness. So I started teaching spinning, and then I added yoga to it, and then Pilates, and then one thing added to another. Then I threw in another kid just to make it more interesting at home. And I kept noticing that even though I was working out a ton, in addition to getting paid to work out, I couldn't lose like the last 10 pounds. It was this ongoing struggle. And that's when I really got into nutrition and realized that I'd been eating mountains of sugar and gallons of Diet Coke since I was about 12.
Oh, and you were still doing that?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, forever, right? And that's when everything started to click. That's why I realized why I had that extra bit of weight. And it was really crazy because once I stopped consuming all that sugar and artificial sweetener, like my kids started behaving better. It was really weird. And then my husband stopped being so annoying, which was also very crazy, given.
Did he stop sugar too, or is this you're all on your end?
No, this is all on me. I mean, I didn't make anybody else do anything. And, just traffic stopped being as bad, and just life started being a lot better. And then there were other benefits, such as, visits to the dentist were just horrible because my tartar buildup wasn't as bad. And then, my skin was better, and just there were so many good things that happened once I started getting rid of sugar and Diet Coke from my diet that's when I got really into nutrition, because I knew there was something I'd been missing all those years. Because like we're learning now, you can't outrun the fork, right?
Yeah.
Because we used to think diet and exercise, like they were 50-50. Like you can't have one without the other. And especially as we get older, and I hate that expression, it becomes even more important, the quality of the food we eat. I did Weight Watchers in my 20s, and that was back in the day where like nothing was off the table, right? So a bag of Cheetos could be the same as, as like a meal, like
right.
as, chicken and, kale or, something healthy. So, Cheetos is the same, right? So to have the Cheetos doesn't matter. Well, actually I learned, through lots of trial and error, mostly error, that it does truly matter. Yes. So that's what got me in the nutrition side. And then once I became a health coach, I started realizing, wait, I was actually really addicted to sugar. And a lot of people are addicted to sugar, and it's not a shameful thing. It's just a fact, which got me into being a food addiction counselor. So being a food addiction counselor is rather unusual in America because there aren't a lot of discussions about food addiction. Mm-hmm. And yet I guarantee you on Monday morning in schools across the land, there will be some very ugly behavior for grade school children because they will have horrible sugar hangovers. Same thing the day after Halloween. It's just how the body reacts to tons of sugar. Mm-hmm. Food addiction is seen much more seriously in other parts of the world, but in America, we're still in this very confused state about it. But becoming a food addiction counselor was something I felt very passionate about. Had to go to Iceland to do it, which was quite an unusual trip.
You had to go there because you couldn't find any others?
There weren't any food addiction counseling programs here, and that's where I had to go to get certified, was Iceland, yeah.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, and there were people from all over the world, like Jordan and, Hungary. I mean, just crazy.
Is food addiction a big deal in Iceland?
It is, actually. It's seen in the same way as alcoholism.
Ah.
Same thing in like Dubai, parts of Europe, Canada. In Canada, you can go and do a 30-day government subsidized rehab for food addiction.
Really? And yet
know.
Here in America, they, as in, corporations and even government, are pushing food. The more the better, and the more processed, the more we see it. Absolutely.
I actually went to a big food conference in November. I was actually surprised they let me in because I filled out the application. I thought they would be like, no way, but let me in. And I was sitting in this conversation where there are all these big food people like ConAgra and PepsiCo and whatever. And they were talking about how much high fructose corn syrup they add to juice. And I'm just like cringing because, juice as it is so stinking sweet. Mm-hmm. And then, high fructose corn syrup is like the worst sugar you could ever consume. And how much of it they add to juice, like the juice that, little kids drink. And it was just awful. But, that's what gets everybody addicted to sugar when they're so young is, juice that has sugar added. So it all made sense after, and I mean, I met very nice people who looked me straight in the face and said, gluten intolerance is made up. The reason why your stomach hurts after you eat wheat, Erin, is because you don't eat it often enough.
Oh, really?
I know. And I just was very respectful and remembered that her rent is paid by the wheat lobbyists and to probably just go with it. Mm-hmm. Very nice man who works for the corn syrup people. He was telling me that we're all a bunch of fanatics, So it's a whole machine on their side of how they package food and, and they have very derogatory terms for us, but the nicest one I heard was like the Whole Foods people. So people that go to Whole Foods, people that know about Whole Foods, people that can afford Whole Foods are not really the biggest consumers of food in America. Mm-hmm. There's like 400 or so Whole Foods, but there's like 2,500 Krogers, for example. Right. So the juice that has the high fructose corn syrup isn't really selling in Whole Foods anyway.
Right.
It's moving in the Kroger, and they know that. So that's what pretty much got me to here and my coaching business and writing a book, which is called Why Can't I Stick to My Diet? Because I knew the easiest way to get to the most women was writing an ebook. Because first of all, after 50 Shades of Grey, women will read a lot of things on a tablet that they won't necessarily, read on a lounge chair in the summer, right?
Yeah.
No one really knows what you're reading at soccer practice. But, it's a quick book. It's not meant to take you, 3 weeks to read it. It talks about, my story. It talks about science, and it talks about how you can move on with your life. Because for so many of us, we've been on a diet or thinking we should go on a diet or needing to go on a diet or, binging before the diet for decades. So what I tried to do was, write a book in a way that feels like a conversation with a girlfriend, in which this is what you need to do, and I'm not going to quote unquote sugarcoat it, but you need to just, cut out 4 or 5 basic things. And also let's talk about the emotional part, because for so many of us, we just cut points or we cut, macros or whatever, intermittent fasting or keto or whatever the trend is, but we seldom get to the root of the problem.
Which is sugar?
Well, that is a huge problem. No, the root of the problem being what is not working in our life that we're using food to substitute for or to numb out with. The emotions behind the food.
That's great.
Yeah, because that's the really ugly stuff that nobody wants to deal with, right?
Yeah.
It's so much easier to hide behind like fat bombs or, getting really neurotic about what exact type of, green juice and the sourcing and, on and on. While, well, why do we always need to lose 20 pounds? Why are you holding on to 20 pounds? Like, what is that serving? I mean, in a certain way, we do things because they serve a purpose in our life. For me, honestly, the reason I had an extra 10 pounds, I believe now, is because it kept me from going back out in the world. It kept me from doing what I'm doing now. It kept me from really putting myself out there because, I was a mom and I was teaching and I was running the school book fair, and that was safe, right? And the safety of being in the little mom bubble, was very secure. Like I could have spent the next 30 years just, rearranging the pillows on my couch. A lot of people do that. But once I realized that I was hiding behind my kids and, pick up and drop off schedule, that's when I realized, wait, there's a huge connection that a lot of us are not making behind what is the weight actually doing for us as like almost like a self-defense mechanism.
Right.
And
it's a shield.
Exactly. A shield's very well put. And a lot of us don't want to go there because it's so much easier just to count the points or to count the macros or to pick a fitness app on your phone.
Yeah.
But once we really are willing to get down and dirty with it, that's the quickest way actually to be done with the dieting stuff. Because for me now, if something comes up, like, a bad emotion or a feeling or an argument with my mother or whatever, it doesn't even occur to me to eat over it because I know A, it's totally self-destructive, and B, I need to handle whatever feelings I have because they're here for a reason, right?
Yeah.
I'm upset because maybe I need to deal with something from my past, or maybe my mother crossed a line or whatever it is. But I'm not going to find the answer in a bag of gummy bears. I know that's because I never did, right? But so many of us, we hide behind that, and we don't even know we're doing it until we've woken up from it.
There's a huge lack of self-awareness, and that's one of the things I see here a lot from my clients is they focus on the diet. They focus on the points or the calories or the grams of the the steps, the food tracking, all these little technicalities. And, in a sense, they're kind of doing the right thing in that they're working on a system or a structure or a way of doing things that will elicit a certain response, but yet they are not acknowledging why they had these little chocolate or sugar binge fests every night or every other night after work. I love what you're saying about this, the hiding behind that extra 10 or 20 or however many pounds, because that does put us in a certain comfort zone. So if you think about what it's doing for you, maybe you will change your minds about how you act.
Absolutely. I mean, I have many friends who avoid me now. No, I have many friends who, I mean, let's face it, like they have an extra 50 pounds or so that they've gained since their wedding that they can, in a certain level in their brain say that's the reason their marriage is bad, right? Not that they've grown apart from their husband or, he's whatever, right?
Right.
So once you're willing to look at this stuff in a very objective way and say, this weight I'm carrying is serving a purpose and not judge it and really be willing to open up the hood or whatever you want to call it, then you can make some serious changes. But just the counting of the points and getting really neurotic with, weighing all your food and how many carbs is in an English muffin. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think people should be eating tons of carbs. I mean, we can talk nutrition all day.
Right.
But it's what's behind the food that I've personally and from my clients seen where everything lurks. Because if you know people that have gained and regained the same weight, it's because the foundational work was never done. They were just weighing and measuring or counting or macroing or whatever. And I know a lot of people who have gained and regained it, and they truly don't know why. And it's very heartbreaking to watch. But on another level, if they were willing to do it, actually, they could find a better way to live.
Absolutely. It's going back to that word awareness. They are not self-aware, maybe subconsciously, intentionally, maybe they're, just living on a superficial level, whatever that is. And that's why I often recommend people learn and get really comfortable with meditating, because that way they can look inward more and see what they're able to do, or see what they're feeling, in other words, with their internal eye.
No, I agreed. I think meditation is an amazing way just to even observe your thoughts, not judge them, just to observe them. Because if we're not quiet and aware of what we're thinking, just even thinking, I'm upset, so now I'm hungry. Wait, what? Wait, thoughts don't make me hungry, right? But if we're not aware enough to even think that way, to even sit down and try to do it. I mean, I remember when I started trying to meditate in my yoga certification class, it was torture. It was pure torture. Because I would sit there and, the teacher is like walking us through it, and, we're on a boat and we're drifting in the boat and I'm thinking like, are we on a garbage boat? Are we on the love boat?
Come on, let's go do something. I want to move my body. I'm
like, are we going to do handstands or what? No, but I remember sitting there and thinking like, is it a love boat? Is it a pleasure cruise? My mind would not shut up, right? Yeah. And it took me forever to realize to stop judging it and don't be so determined to get to nirvana already. But even then, to be able to relax enough to be like, this is how your meditation is going to go today, and that is okay. But a lot of us just want to force it, which is really hard.
Yeah.
You want to force the enlightenment, damn it. And it can be really difficult to learn how to meditate, especially if you're through sheer will, I'm going to get to be an enlightened person I was determined to be.
You brought up several things when you were talking about your journey to where you are now, and sugar was the big thing that kind of your epiphany about sugar was what really started shifting your mindset and moving you towards a better place. And I don't know if you know, but I have a whole sugar series, and it's in the early 90 episodes, the 90, 91,
Yeah.
92, et cetera, like that. Me and the guests I have talk about sugar in a lot of different ways. And one thing that just irritates me to no end, and I say this a lot, but I want to get the word out. Kids cannot handle sugar. I'm so sick of the excuse that, oh, yeah, I'll give the donuts to the kids because they can handle sugar. I can't. I won't eat the sugar. I'm on a diet, but let's give it to the kids. So it's kind of like giving kids cigarettes. What's going to happen? They might not like it at first. In the case of sugar, they do, but, they keep having cigarettes over and over and over again, and pretty soon they're smokers. I've talked with people that started smoking at 8 years old. No kidding. Maybe not regularly, but they had their first cigarette at 8, and, they would have some now and then. Why would you give your kid a cigarette? Well, not many sane adults would. But think about what you're doing with sugar. What are you setting them up for? Do you want them to have the same difficulties you've been having? I don't.
I wholeheartely agree. We have a huge blind spot in America when it comes to how we feed our kids. Have you been to Disney World? I mean, holy cow. No, in my book, I open up with a story my mother had told me a million times, but she's not super thrilled that I open up my book with it. She always told the story of how when I was little, if she wanted to go shopping, she'd give me a giant licorice rope, and she would hand it to me in the stroller, and I would just gnaw on it. And then usually by the time she was done at the mall, the licorice rope would be gone and we would be done.
Mm-hmm. Kept you quiet.
Yeah. And I was probably, if I was in an umbrella stroller, I was, 1 to 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you know a lot of alcoholics or drug addicts or cigarette smokers, they've usually had a taste of whatever they were addicted to before they're about 12. So cigarettes, you said early as 8. Well, most of us had sugar before we were 1. I mean, there's usually a big production with a 1-year-old's birthday cake, right? So when we have sugar at such an early age, and then comes all of the associations, right? Cookies, with grandma, Easter's around the corner. Like, it is such a strong thing. And when people get really, really upset about, well, you're not going to do this with the kids or that with the kids. And, don't get me wrong. My kids are kids. They are downstairs in my house probably playing video games right now. But when a lot of us have this blind spot when it comes to feeding our kids junk, it's very upsetting to me because I know that you're setting your kids up. And also, let's talk about the inflammation, because the inflammatory foods we're giving our kids, all disease starts in inflammation. So if you have someone that has a genetic predisposition for an autoimmune disease, for example, and they've done nothing but eat sugar and drink soda their entire childhood, they're a lot more likely to develop some sort of autoimmune disease.
Right.
So it's not just about, cavities and childhood obesity, which is the obvious things, right? There's also a lot of other things that sugar can do. Now we're realizing through the studies that, all the Alzheimer's connections are seeing now with sugar. And, it's really frightening because we have this collective blind spot with sugar with kids. Like I said, Easter's around the corner. Have you been to a store?
Oh, it's disgusting.
It's really weird too, because it's even in the department stores. If you go to a department store, there's bags of high-end jelly beans. It's not enough that it's in the grocery stores and the drug stores and the candy stores. It's got to be in the department stores.
Well, that's because people buy it.
Yeah,
they do.
And
If they didn't buy it, if a whole Easter display of sugar sat in Macy's, mostly untouched, they wouldn't have it again the next year.
Absolutely. But, exactly. That's just how, consumerism works. But someone's buying it, and enough people are buying it that it comes back next year. like the little See's candy displays in the airport. Enough people are buying that stuff that it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very strange thing. Like once you're really aware, because like I'm really aware of how much sugar there's out there now that I don't eat it. Like yesterday I was buying my husband and my son matching Easter shirts. I know it's really cheesy, but just go with me here. There were cupcakes at the clothing store. Like, why were there cupcakes at 10 o'clock in the morning at a men's clothing store?
Gross.
And they were pink because it's Easter. I'm thinking, what the heck? And then I went to another store. I was under my daughter, and there was Easter candy out. There's Easter candy everywhere. And just like there was Halloween candy everywhere. So it's just this very strange thing where sugar is everywhere. And when you're someone that really can't have sugar like I am, because sugar is everywhere, I'm always just kind of like on guard, I call it, because it's at Staples. It's at the department store.
It's hidden too. You said cupcakes at 10 in the morning at a men's clothing store. Well, if they weren't cupcakes, they would have been muffins. And
oh yeah, muffins are the worst. Muffins are cake.
Yeah, muffins really are cake. Now they don't have to be. I eat these really dense flax muffins that they weigh about literally almost a pound
bricks, right?
each. Yeah. And I cannot eat anything that's softer than that. I can't stand cake and muffins and soft breads and things like that. I need something hearty to dig into. And partly that hardiness tells me that there's fiber, there's maybe some nuts, maybe some whole grain in there, probably all of it. So be careful. It hides.
No, it totally does. There's so much sugar in processed foods. That's like the number one place people don't realize, packaged hamburger buns, ketchup's always the thing people never think about. So the more processed food we eat, the more likelihood we have hidden sugar. And also sometimes it's not called sugar. In fact,
there's so many different names. Almost
all the time it's not called sugar. It's anything with a, TOSE at the end. Yeah, those are always bad news. But when you look at the nutrition label, you can always see the sugar part under the carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty clear one. But yeah, a lot of processed food has tons of sugar. And then what they also like to do is add an artificial sugar, artificial sweetener, which makes your body crave even more sugar. So the whole thing is such a giant mess. Mm-hmm. But yeah, don't eat the muffin. Just don't eat the muffin.
Right. Now, without giving away the farm, can you tell us maybe, briefly why diets don't work? You are listening to the Live Fit podcast with guest Erin Wathen. Why don't diets work? You can see show notes, videos, articles, and health improvement plans at livefitpodcast.com. See you there.
Diets don't work because we have a diet mentality. So if we had I want to get healthy for good mentality, like this is the rest of my life, that is sustainable. But I want to lose 10 pounds for the reunion. You're already going into it with a beginning, middle, and end mindset.
Oh yeah.
So if our mindset is, you know what, I want to be someone that's healthy. I want to be someone that's energetic. I want to be someone that doesn't eat the muffin at 10 o'clock in the morning. Then you're setting yourself up for success. But going on a diet in the first place is a lot of the reason why you can't stick to it. So when we go on diets, like I did a million times, Mondays were always the perfect day to start one. It was always with this very strange phenomenon a lot of us have of once we get to our goal weight, then we can eat how we want, which is so illogical. Mm-hmm. But it's just this dream we all bought into.
If I can just get to 180, then I can eat whatever the heck I want.
Yeah, if I can get to 180, then all I can eat is Parmesan.
Well, and then you have to do the diet again.
Yeah, and Rupert floats all day. Well, actually, if you get to 180, you need less food than you're eating right now, and you need to be eating higher quality food. and you exercising. That's why The Biggest Loser show never had reunions. So, but we all bought into it, we all
hysterical.
bought into it, didn't we? We all were like, oh, okay, that's a great thing, but whenever you did get to your goal weight and you realized, oh my gosh, I have to eat less, I have to watch what I ingest more, and I need to be working out more because I've just, it's a hard thing. And then there's always this problem with if you didn't get to the real root of why you gained the weight in the first place, which most people weren't willing to do or weren't even aware of. Like, that's the thing, is so many people aren't even aware that they were misusing food.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they'll just say things like, I've just always been heavy, or, I still have some baby weight to lose, and the kid's like 12, right? Or, I always think of things like, well, it was never a good time for me. And I'm like, what does that mean? But,
they're under stress. They have a stressful job. Somebody died, whatever it might be. They can't change their eating because that's their comfort.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying I had a guy from high school reach out to me the other day, and, he was, and I haven't had any interaction with him in like a year or two, and he was, chit-chatting me up a little bit. And then I was like, where is this going? And then he was like, I just want to let you know, I've been listening to you, watching your podcast, watching your videos, and I've lost 30 pounds. And I'm like, oh, that's fabulous. I'm so happy for you. How did you gain the 30 pounds? He's like, oh, I was really busy. I'm like, no, stop it. How did you gain the 30 pounds? Like, don't even go there with me. He's like, well, I kind of hated my job and was, drowning my sorrows in food. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Because if you were just going to, don't IM me out of nowhere and give me a line of bull, because like, I'm not going to stand for it. So, so do you like your job now?
Mm-hmm.
But whenever people really believe that it was the job's fault that they gained 30 pounds, and they truly think it's this other thing's fault that they gained weight, when actually it is what you chose to do, then I can work with, I chose to gain 30 pounds because I was drowning my sorrows in food. All right, that's being honest. I had a client a couple weeks ago who said, oh, I gained a bunch of weight when I wrote my book. And I was like, how long did it take you to write your book? I'm like, wait, unless you were gaining a pound a day, that doesn't work out. What happened really? Turns out his father got sick. He had problems with his job, his ex-wife, and it all happened over a 6-month time period. I'm like, okay, that's why you gained weight.
And this emphasizes or illustrates that we use food as a drug.
Totally. Absolutely. But I can work with someone who says I gained weight over 6 months because I was drowning my sorrows in food.
Mm-hmm.
But if he insisted that he gained weight when he wrote his book, and it didn't take him that long to write his book, then I would just be prepared for a very long road with him.
Mm-hmm.
So the more honest you can be with yourself, I think the more likely you are to truly succeed in this being the time when you truly clean up your diet. You truly get healthy for good. Because what's interesting is when we stop obsessing over weighing 180, like you said, and we decide this is the time when we're going to get healthy, you will end up weighing 180. It's really weird because you're eating in a way that is how your body really wants to eat. You're not eating sugar. You're not eating out of emotion. You're not drinking tons of soda. You're not eating a pint of ice cream or whatever. So when you're actually eating how our bodies were meant to eat, it's pretty stinking hard to be overweight anymore.
You're saying eating what our bodies are meant to eat and talking about sugar. And so I'm wondering if any amount of sugar we are meant to eat. I mean, certainly we're meant to eat fruit, whole fruit, not fruit juice, of course. We've covered that. The quantity of sugar in there is pretty much identical to soda. But can we have any amount of sugar or from any source?
I personally think it's very hard for most people to have a limited amount of sugar and not let it impact the rest of their choices. I don't have it. I mean, I have like berries and stuff. I'm also very sensitive to sugar. Like I said, I definitely was a sugar addict. As far as the normal people, I think that if they need to be very, very aware of how sugar makes them feel, because it is a drug.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like saying, alcohol, like use sparingly. But with kids, that's where I get really, really wary about, because they don't weigh that much. And you're giving them a piece of cake that the same size you gave a fully grown man for a 50-pound kid.
Or cake and ice cream and a soda.
Mm-hmm. Yay. You have the trifecta there. As far as added sugar, I'm very reluctant to recommend it to anyone. I don't see any benefit, truly. It's one of those sticky subjects because a lot of us have this cheat day concept where we want to be able to go off of our food plan. Well, it's a very slippery slope because there is a chemical reaction that will happen when we have sugar, because our body will want more of it. Our brain will want more of it. And then psychologically, it's hard to cut it off as well, which is why often cheat meals lead to cheat days, lead to cheat weeks, lead to just a giant cheat.
Life.
Lead to just a giant case of the screw-its. So I'm very reluctant to say, have X amount of, grams of sugar and you're okay. Everyone is different. And if you're an adult, it's up to you. I don't see a huge benefit to it. But if you're absolutely insisting on having sugar, the way I would recommend to have it would be like after lunch, after you've had a lot of fat and protein, so your blood sugar is pretty stabilized, and so be dessert. Very mindful. Yeah, a dessert, but definitely portion control. Like, don't just take the carton of Ben & Jerry's in a spoon. You actually portion it out, use a bowl, turn off all distractions, and really enjoy it. But then what I want you to do is be very, very mindful of how you feel 20 minutes afterwards, 2 hours afterwards, 4 hours afterwards, because odds are you're going to be wanting to go back to that container in the the freezer.
Right.
Because your body's like, that was a really good idea. He's back to eating ice cream. He wised up. Thank God. And that's not your body talking. That's the sugar talking. And that is where a lot of us have made wrong decisions, is we go back to the Ben & Jerry's container. And the Ben & Jerry's container, it's a gateway container, right? Next thing you know, donuts are there or whatever everyone's into. And it's very easy, especially in this day and age, to have whatever we want in, a couple of clicks. We can have just about any food, right? Especially if you live in a metropolitan area. So as far as, how much sugar I recommend you have, very little added sugar.
What about fruit? Apples, oranges,
bananas? I'm fine with fruit, but I think the problem with fruit is it's very easy to overeat fruit. And if you're going to have, I eat a lot of berries at breakfast because of just the glycemic index, which is just a way that foods are ranked for how much they jack up your blood sugar. So for example, think of blueberries being on the lower end while mangoes are on the higher end. So how much natural sugar
absolutely. Yeah, there's a big difference.
So if you've ever had a Jamba Juice, you are just high, your blood sugar is high afterwards because it's an intense amount of sugar in a short period of time. And you had a straw, for Pete's sake. You don't have to chew it. You're just slurping it up.
Yeah.
So
quick digestion.
Exactly. Boom, bloodstream. So if you're going to have fruit, if you're in Hawaii, I'm not saying you don't have any pineapple. Of course you're going to have pineapple in Hawaii. But just be aware of how you feel afterwards, and always have it with a meal. Always have it with protein and fat to slow it down, because when we have a bunch of sugar alone, it will jack up our blood sugar and it'll crash our blood sugar. So, fruit's fine if you've noticed that you're not craving more, half an hour, 4 hours later. Because if you're really paying attention to your body, you're probably craving it afterwards.
I always recommend people, if and when they have carbs, to consume it with protein and fats to kind of help balance things out.
Absolutely.
How can people get a hold of you?
They can find me on my website, which is at ewwellnesssolutions.com.
And your book, Why Can't I Stick to My Diet, sounds really intriguing, and I'm betting lots of people are going to read it.
Well, thank you.
All right, Erin, one last parting shot and action item for our listeners.
Sure, no problem. After you have a meal, really notice how you feel afterwards. Not just, go through life, just, lunch, breakfast, whatever. Take a minute, 20 minutes afterwards, and just really notice, first of all, can you remember what you ate? That's always a good one.
Oh, yeah.
And also, are you bloated? Are you full? Are you satisfied? Because there's a huge difference between being full and being satisfied. Mm-hmm. And are you craving something else? Because once we really start to pay attention to how we feel after we eat, it's amazing how much easier it is to eat right. Because oftentimes the food we think we like actually gives us a lot of digestion problems, which is a sign of our body not really liking it. So just being mindful when we're eating, because that's the beginning of a lot of good stuff.
And I'm going to call myself out on something. I ate something yesterday early in the day, pretty much breakfast. And I knew it wasn't a healthy thing, but it was one of those, I've been eating pretty healthy for, many, 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 many days in a row. I'm going to go ahead and have this, and I don't know, whatever, just to see what happens. I know it's probably not going to be great, but how bad can it be? Well, let me tell you, I had a really crappy day.
Oh, no.
I felt horrible. I felt like I had a brick in my belly all day. Oh. Seriously, until I woke up, I felt crappy. I was sort of grumpy and crabby, and it wasn't a pint of ice cream either. It was a couple of hamburgers. So I will not be doing that again. I promise myself I will not, because it was a crappy day. It felt like 3 Mondays all put together, but it was a Thursday.
It was a triple Monday. It is really interesting how food affects our mood. And we don't even realize it. Like I said, my husband was less annoying when I stopped eating sugar.
That's amazing.
I was being serious. He was really less annoying. It was strange because when
you were less on edge.
Yeah, the kids screamed less, I was less on edge, and I also liked myself better because I was making better choices. So there were a lot of,
And you felt better.
And I felt better. And when we eat horribly, or we just don't feel good. And like you said yesterday, you talk yourself into it, quite frankly. And
yep.
Even yesterday, and I know better about sugar, and I could talk to you for an hour about how horrible sugar is, but those cupcakes were really cute, and they had like sprinkles on them. And that's the thing, is they were cute, and they were all like on this display, and they were like bunnies, and
right.
And that's the thing, is like, it's also appealing to the eye. You're like, oh, and it's pink and
it's
pastel-y.
It's fun.
It's fun. And that's the thing, is the connection we have as a society of food equaling fun is so strong. And,
yep.
And it's really hard to break it. But when you are aware of how you feel after a meal, then it's easier to become aware of food equals fun and food equals entertainment. And then you're on the path of someone that's more aware of how you feel about a lot of things to do with food. So a good place to start is just noticing how you feel after you eat, because so many of us are just disconnected from it.
All right, Erin, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you. Birds of a feather and all, we could talk forever on this subject. Hopefully
Absolutely.
That we've given our listeners something that they can chew on, think about, learn to be more mindful, be more aware, eliminate or at least reduce the amount of sugar they are consuming, and they will feel better and have much, much better health. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Live Fit Podcast. Please subscribe and share with someone you care about. Read show notes, articles, resources, and learn more about our weight management programs at livefitpodcast.com. Once again, thanks for listening, and always remember to live fit.